Good afternoon, everybody. It's Adam DeClarico with Next Generation Soccer Academy. Really thankful to be continuing our audio interview series. We had some great interviews last week, and we are truly blessed this week again. And joining us today, we have Christina Unkel, who I've known for a very long time, her and her husband. But Christina has basically climbed the ranks with FIFA refereeing in the United States, as has her husband, Ted. So we're really excited to have her. So, hey, Christina, how are you?
Doing well, Adam. Thanks. Many years have passed since we've used to referee you on the fields in the back yard here in Sarasota. So,
yeah, it's so great. We live really close to each other too. So yeah, having known you and Ted for all these years and being able to watch you guys, as a huge soccer fan, watching you guys on TV. I was joking with Rich Hines, who Ted knows well, that I said something about, Rich getting a red card from Ted, and Rich said, I never got a red card, or at least if I did, it wasn't because of what I said was wrong, so that's, how Rich is. So, what's funny is I had some topics for today and definitely want to touch on a few things, but I saw too recently that you are pretty heavily involved now with NCAA. Of course, you're an attorney on top of being an awesome FIFA referee, a rules analyst, a mother, a wife, so a gym owner. So all of these awesome things. But I saw yesterday something on one of your social media pages about the NCAA and how you're involved with them now as far as being a rules analyst.
Yeah, so this is actually my second year. I serve as the active referee on the rules committee for NCAA sports for men and women's soccer. So effectively in college soccer, they call it rules. So I help give a lot of input and insight. So the people who sit on the committees are D1 through D3 coaches, as well as administrators in NCAA. And so when they're looking to revise or make new rules that are, which is kind of an important thing that I learned, which is, whatever's relevant to the amateur college game, I at least be able to help provide input and advice as to, if they have an idea or they want to fix an issue, whether, it's fighting or mass confrontations. What rules would best be implemented and how does that play out, and how would a referee, be able to interact with that, and just kind of the unique qualities in NCAA that you don't see in a professional international match, right? Because the stakes are a little bit different. We're talking about student athletes. We're talking about shorter period of time, right? Really, when you talk about 2, 3, 4 months. So it's been an interesting process. Something that I've been when I was asked to sit on it last year was intriguing, was a non-rules change. And you learn that every 2 years they change the rules or they revisit the rules in NCAA. This year was a big one because obviously they're trying to change the game in college to be much closer to IFAB and FIFA's laws of the games. And it was an interesting conversation to do so, and to do so over a Zoom virtual connection to change the laws, the most significant change for the rules in college over Zoom. Kind of difficult, but, really closing that gap and having that communication and just frank communications with coaches and admins about, how they see the game from their angle and how we see the game, and, how can we meet in the middle, and then, getting that appreciation of how a coach looks at the game too, from a college perspective.
Yeah, and they're super lucky to have you, of course, from your perspective, not only as an attorney, but as obviously a FIFA referee. But it's interesting too, because I guess the college game is going potentially through, some transformation with a committee about, being a longer season and changing some of those rules too. So I can only hope, having been a former college player, and you were too, that some of these rules make college more competitive, which obviously could impact the National League through MLS and our national team. So super lucky to have you. Yeah. Well, that's great. It was just interesting to see that. I was like, oh, it's really cool that you're doing that. So I remember, recently with the Women's World Cup, hearing you come on TV when there were any VAR questions. And I don't know if anybody ran the statistics, but I'm pretty sure you were like a solid 90% right, if not more. So that was really, really neat to be able to listen to you basically be able to analyze. It's great that you're doing that. What was that like for you? How was that experience?
Yeah, so the beauty of leading into, which is, I'll kind of give you a brief story of, how I got asked to do it, which is just kind of, it goes back to that theme with regardless of where you're at in life and what you do, right? Always perform at your best level, never knowing who's watching, right? Because it could open opportunities and doors and things that you never would think of, right? So if you would have ever asked me, would I be a sports journalist or a broadcaster or, report anything on TV, I would have laughed at you. About a year and a half ago, I would have laughed at you and said you were crazy, and that's never in my future. And yet I served as the voice for the rules analyst on Fox Sports #1 programming, which, that was an interesting conversation, negotiations as well, when I kind of brought that back into perspective that they were bringing a rookie in to be a rules analyst. But it was a different mindset, but it was one that thankfully I've been prepared for. Having officiated 21 years now. Ooh, yeah, 22 years now. Fishing 22 years now. 11 or 12 years at the professional level, 8 years at the international level. Countless numbers of hours that we spend going over video clips, reviews, looking at all that information, and having spent since Major League Soccer introduced VAR into the program, or into at least Major League Soccer, I've been part of that program as a VAR referee in MLS. So thankfully, because I had that training 3-4 years prior to this rules analyst position, I had been very comfortable with looking at footage and, making a determination and a decision based on VAR protocols and what we determine, is a clear, clear and convincing error. That actually prepared me for this position here with the rules analyst, because I was still making calls, even though not affecting the outcome of the game, or at least informing the referee, right, who can affect the outcome of the game.
Right.
Doing it under a very time-sensitive pressure situation by just looking at clips and having, a case of first impression. And this was a little different, right, because I couldn't slow down the tape necessarily. Everything that you all saw from the regular viewer's standpoint is the only clips I got as well. So our feed was exactly what you saw. Unfortunately, I didn't have the angles and clips that you would get as a VAR referee. So thankfully, with the VAR training, I feel like that really kind of gave me a level of comfortability of sitting behind with a producer, which in VAR, we actually have an operator who operates the clips and films and clips back and forth for us. So having that level of comfortability really helped when I stepped into that role as the rules analyst. And like I said, we spend years training and nobody believes us, right? People think we just roll out of the car and just put on our socks and go. But
right.
I spend countless of hours on the weekends at these clinics and training programs in cold hotel, conference rooms, looking at these clips. So it was very cool to be able to effectively, like I told the Fox Sports executive producers, I'm like, so effectively you want me to take about 20 years of refereeing experience and condense it into 5 to 10 second sound bites. And the answer was yes. And I was like, my life. And they're like, yes. So yeah, it was interesting, and it was an incredible opportunity. And I have been the biggest advocate for not keeping the referee world siloed, right? So I have the opportunity to serve on a couple of committees for U.S. soccer in general. And one of the events that had been taken to was effectively, it was a conversation between coaches at all different levels through U.S. soccer and the professional and the national team levels, as well as the referee voice. And it was very eye-opening when I saw that what I consider U.S. soccer, having 4 different legs, right? When we talk about soccer, generally, there's 4 different legs. Too little coaches at the highest level on the national team level didn't really even know what we did on the referee side. And that communication and that channel back and forth of just open communication and understanding doesn't exist. And even, I cringe as I listen to some commentators, whether they're commentating on our professional, international games, just get the laws of the game incorrect completely.
Right.
And they destroy the referee. And we're sitting here like saying, no, that was accurate. And that was actually high level officiating. And maybe that was correct 2, 5, 10 years ago when they were active players, but that's not the laws now. So to have this opportunity to kind of be the voice for what I call the third team, right? The referee team, and be able to educate the everyday soccer viewer, and or at least in the World Cup, right, it gets tricky. You are educating people who only watch the game every 4 years. Was definitely an opportunity and a way to continue to grow and, have people realize that there are the referee side of this game, and it goes back and forth. so that they actually get educated on the proper laws of the game and become just better football players, better, viewers of the game, and understand the game, than just hearing, someone, do a one-off pundit that's incorrect.
Right. It's funny that you bring up the point about, the laws changing. You probably have seen when you watch old game film, professional games, and they pass it back to the goalie and he picks it up or she picks it up, and you're like, whoa, you can't do that. It's like, oh, wait a second, this is from 1994. So
funny because I did the She Believes tournament. I was officiating Japan, England, and it was in Tampa last year. At least one of the first games was. And we were allowed to, at least in that one, FIFA had given that tournament the ability to implement the new laws, right, so that they can practice prior to the Women's World Cup. And one of the laws, obviously, is that you can touch the ball before it leaves the penalty area. And I do remember, we allowed that to happen, and my parents were in the stands, and I went to go see them after the match. And this gentleman came out of nowhere, and he's like, "Why don't you know the laws? Didn't you know they can't touch the ball?"
Oh, no.
Like, well, let me educate you, sir. So
that's an interesting one too. Yeah. And after you see it enough, now we're sort of adjusted to it. Well, I can tell you that up until watching you on the World Cup as the rules analyst, and probably for the rest of my life, I will never be cheering for a rules analyst like I was cheering for you to get it right. So I thought you did a great job. So I know that you're, obviously you're heavily involved with, soccer, but you're also, a big advocate for sports and women in sports. So one of the questions I have for you is, what's it like to be a part of the top level of soccer in the United States, and then, being obviously a beacon for women across the country?
So it's incredible. It's exciting. It's one of those things that when I talk to current athletes, current soccer players, men, women, whatnot, it's a reminder that there's other opportunities and other avenues. So I work with not just people in the soccer world, but outside, different sports on the professional level as well as like the amateur level. And it's a reminder that, not everyone is going to be the next Alex Morgan, right? Not everyone's going to be the next, Serena Williams, right? Just name it. But where can you use your strengths and still be part of, the game that you love? And here, obviously, particularly the beautiful game being soccer. And so this has been, unbeknown to me, this has been essentially kind of like a career passion without me realizing it. Starting to officiate at 10 years old. Now I think they raised it to 12 or 13, but back in the days, it was 10 years old that you could start officiating. For me, well, one, it was because I was yelling at the referee. So my coach made me take the class, but it made me realize very early on, aside from the career skills of being responsible for your assignments, showing up on time, man management, learning how to be an authority figure to people who are 20, 30, 40 years older than you, and get people to do what you need them to do without them realizing. It was unbeknown to me until I was playing college ball that this was the way I can still stay into the game. So I had been officiating up to that, still officiated in college because it was an easy moneymaker, right? I could schedule it around my college soccer season and my games and make more money than my friends who are bartending, right? And still do something that I love around the game. But it wasn't until, the head of Florida, Joe Migna, identified me, funny enough, refereeing my game, and I was yelling at him, but because I knew the laws, so he knew I was a referee. But it was one of those things that it showed me that I'm never going to make the U.S. women's national team, right? Maybe I could play some professional, and it's so inspiring to know that when I played college ball, which I like to say wasn't that long ago, but I think it is now. You could never really say, "Hey, I want to be a professional soccer player" as a female. Like there was no avenue, there was no path unless you went and you played international, right? And that was kind of a foreign thing. So it's so cool to see nowadays where people are either, going straight to playing professional ball out of high school, as there's been a couple of examples who've been successful at it. And, others who play their college route and say, hey, I'm enlisting into the draft for NWSL, which is which is unbelievable. So like for me, it's been a really cool thing because it's allowed me to continue my soccer career. Maybe not as a player, which I loved, which you laughed because I told you I went back to playing ball this past fall just for a season to kind of rekindle that passion, because refereeing can burn you out, and you know the environment can burn you out. But it's such a cool opportunity to continue to have that high and be surrounded by professional athletes and be responsible for administering the game properly and the safety of players and just letting them all shine. It's funny because I don't get starstruck by soccer players whatsoever. And I think it's because I've just been around them for too long. And usually they're just yelling at me. So it's easy to not get starstruck, but it's inspiring to see. And having been a like behind the witness in the sense of I'm always there, I'm always next to them. I've seen so many retirement games. I've been on games where people have capped. I've been on Abby Wambach's goal goal record crushing match at New York Red Bulls. Right. People that I work with now, like Angela Huckles, my first international game was her retirement game. Being able to be that kind of silent observer who's still a very active participant really helps with kind of, it's like this adrenaline rush type of a thing. Because trust me, we do not make money. We lose more money refereeing than you can even imagine, even at the highest levels, than we do what we get out of the game. But being able to see these athletes work in and day out, call themselves professionals and are professionals, even though sometimes the surrounding environments and atmospheres don't lend for it to be a professional environment. But to see the progress and the growth of the women's game of not just soccer, but other sports as well. And to kind of be able to be an advocate for that and experience that with them has been a really cool adrenaline rush, and something that, helps me determine where my talents can lie in helping other organizations, athletes moving forward after I'm getting too old to be able to chase 20-year-old athletes across the field.
Well, you're right about, what an opportunity women have, now with NWSL. I know a few players that are in the NWSL, and you're right. Going back, I don't know how many years, there really wasn't much, right? It was college and, maybe here and there being able to go overseas. But yeah, it's really offered a great opportunity for the young women that are coming out of, their youth clubs or their colleges for sure. Mm-hmm. So that was great feedback on that question. I'm curious too. Obviously you represent referees all over the world, and especially in the United States, but you're recognized as one of the best. There's no doubt that becoming a rules analyst for the World Cup didn't happen by accident. So the question I have for you is, how can you outline what it takes to become elite? What would you say is needed to become elite?
One thing, the athlete mindset. So whether it's in our, on our athletic world or our professional world, or even in school, or no matter who you are, where you're at in your life, career, vocation, sport, it's essentially that athlete mindset, which is the understanding and the acknowledgement that, one, it's a process. Two, you'll have a great season. You might have a bad season or two bad seasons, right? But how do you come back from that, right? So having that mindset of saying it's not going to be perfection, and when it's not perfection, it's not going to destroy me and destroy my outlook in life, and more importantly, my habits and my processes to be able to kind of continue to perform, to be elite. One of the major things is, right, at least bringing it back into kind of the soccer concept, is understanding you can only control what you can control, right? So that's a consistent thing that we say in the referee world: control what you can control. And even before you step on the pitch, the things that you can control is obviously your fitness, right? And fitness takes a couple of different thresholds in the referee world, right? Not only your endurance and your ability to, basically do interval training, right? And keep up with the explosion of the game for 90 plus minutes at the highest level, but also be able to control the mental side of it, of the game in and of itself. So that may require watching footage of the teams ahead of time, right? If you're doing teams you've never seen before, right? Figuring out the different ways to analyze the game very quickly within the first is to determine, who are those game critical players, right? What's the style? What's the process? Like, where does my positioning and movement need to be to, right? What kind of a referee needs to be on this game today, right? Is it really strict referee? Is it one that knows how to, be a player manager, right? Is it somebody who shouldn't be talking at all and just calling a foul and seeing it for what it is? How are they responding to you? So, kind of doing that, one of the biggest things is you have to be very critical of yourself, not necessarily negative critical, but just constructive critical of being able to determine and compartmentalize and see good versus bad versus just how do I improve. So I was talking to someone the other day, and there's one thing that I've kind of, for me, I've always said it's catch and release kind of a moment, which is part of the athlete mindset, right? So if something works in your benefit or is a great movement or positioning or call, et cetera, it's quickly identifying what it is that enabled you to make that call successful, or what it is that enabled you to, right, score that goal, right? Or what it is that enabled you X, right? And identify what those factors are and grab them and realize what context that was in. Context is huge. But the same thing with, like, if I missed a foul, right, and it was right in front of the benches, I had a fourth official and an assistant referee, and I was standing there, and yet we all somehow missed it. What made me as a center referee miss it, and what made my crew miss it, so that I can take that information quickly. I can catch that moment. I can release the moment, so I'm not sitting there doting on the fact that I just missed something, and then make sure I don't repeat that error going forward. So it really comes down to, for me, athlete mindset. I hate to use the word habit, right? Because it doesn't mean you have to be disciplined at every second, but just establishing things and creating an environment that allows you to be successful, I think, is the number one thing. If you don't have an environment that allows you to be able to tap in and engage to where you want to go, no matter how hard you try, things are going to pull you apart. So essentially controlling those things that you can control, which is your own preparation physically, your own preparation mentally, and just stepping into the game, being confident in your training and knowing that you need that confidence to step into anything that you do to be able to execute at a high level and execute when things need. So one thing we use for the Deadlift Effect, which is another company that I have that's actually strength and conditioning programs for referees, because 90% of referees don't get any kind of actual sport science, is, train while no one's watching, to be ready for when everyone's watching. Because trust me, at least in our world, in the referee world, you got a split of a second to make a decision in front of millions of viewers, in front of hundreds of thousands of people in the stand. And you have to trust on your instincts. You have to trust on your training, and you have to trust on your fitness and your crew to know that you're going to be making that right call. So that only comes in by putting in the work when no one's watching.
Yeah. And for anybody listening, there were some really great pieces of advice in there. And we also are at Next Generation Soccer Academy. We're big proponents of control the controllables. Which is what you described, your attitude, your work rate, your fitness, your decision-making. So, and if anybody's ever been to a pro soccer game, the referee warm-up is no small task. I mean, I remember, Christina, I don't know if you remember, we went down to Miami, and I was, 6 rows behind you when Teddy was doing the game down there with Napoli. And that was awesome to see you guys. But I watched Teddy warm up, and I was like, wow, this is like a workout for them, So referees, for anybody listening, if you think referees have it easy, they put in a lot of work at the high level for sure. So, and then mindset, habits. I actually had written down Deadlift Effect because I know you're involved with that. But growth mindset versus fixed mindset is a pretty big one for us too. So great answer. So I guess the last question I have for you is, we have tryouts coming up soon. Who knows when? We're dealing with COVID-19. I don't know if it's going to be next June or May, or if it's going to be this June or May. We're not sure. So I guess the last question I have for you, Christina, is, what advice can you give the players that are, ramping up for tryouts? Obviously they've been at home. Everyone's been trying to stay busy, but tryouts are going to be here. And what advice can you give for these young athletes that can help inspire them to do their best?
Yeah, I think, and kind of the biggest is where people see a lot of negativity, and don't get me wrong, this situation is, a first of its kind for, our generation and for any of our generations within this time, but is to also see the silver lining. So I just got off of a call with DLE with the deadlift stuff with some of the trainers there for the referees. And I say, there's never really an opportunity or time because soccer, especially here in Florida, is almost a 365-day kind of a sport, right? We have beautiful weather, so we can play all the time. There's really never an off season or a preseason, right? So when you get into college sports, you go to preseason before season, and it's like a month and a half of, training 3 days and just going through the rigors, right? And you kill yourself and then you enter into season. But you don't really have a time period where you can work on performance, right? Usually you enter into season. There's a little bit of a performance you can do in the sense of increasing your performance level, but then you're really focusing on maintaining your fitness level and also injury prevention so you can get through a season. Then you take your time off and then you restart again, where this is given an opportunity for those who are coming up for, when tryouts happen, you have a big window to actually work on improving your performance, which is very hard to do in a time frame, right? You no longer have to worry about, a game on Saturday or 2 games on the weekend and tapering and only being able to train hard on a Monday and a Tuesday and that kind of a thing. You can truly periodize your workouts here for easily the next 8 to 12 weeks, which if you talk to any kind of certified strength and conditioning trainer, will tell you 3 months of training is really where you need to get to some peak performance, is that, you can use this time to enhance your performance that you not necessarily would have had that opportunity to do so leading into tryouts just based on the soccer schedule and how much soccer there is here in Florida. So, take this time as not a negativity. Take this time as in not I'm restricted and I can't do this. Take this time to be able to focus on yourself and how you can make yourself physically strong. Because we always say one thing, you can't help others unless you yourself are a strong individual, and both physically and mentally. So definitely take this opportunity to create an environment that allows you to focus on yourself mentally as well as physically. Because trust me, life does not give you that time to time block. So you've been given a time block from Mother Nature. So let's do it.
Yeah, great feedback. And for the folks out there that have been sitting around or trying to stay active, what Christina's describing, the periodization. It's kind of weird, Christina, because right now it's, the way we look at it is players have been off for 2 months, and this represents, like you're describing, their off season, so to speak. So it's sort of like if you don't give them something right out of the gate when we go back to normal, if it's early summer, they're basically going to have like a 4-month off season. Mm-hmm. So at NextGen, we're trying to plan through that. How do we get these players back to working on things like fitness through our periodization program and getting them to be match ready come August. Mm-hmm. So,
one thing I don't want people to realize, like everyone's dealing with this. So we're dealing with Major League Soccer as well as NWSL, right? When do the players get time to get back in to be able to start the season? Same thing as referees. What games are we going to be doing to gear up? So at least the good thing is it's an equalizer. So everyone's in the same scenario kind of going forward. And if there's one thing I can harp on, at least from seeing soccer played at the highest levels by, name, the best players from, the Messis to the Megan Rampinos to the Marta De Silvas, is first touch. If you all can master your guys' first touch, that is a game changer, and your individual one-on-one skills. Those are what separates the players at the highest level from the other players. You get to a point where everybody's really good, but what distinguishes you as one of the best players is your ability to have a first touch and control, and your ability to take people one-on-one. That's what distinguishes these players from others.
You just got me really excited to get back out on the field. So,
you should go to Lakes and train.
Well, it's funny. I went out to the field today. Actually, I met a friend out. We did juggling for about 20 minutes. We were doing some short and long range passing, and then we got into some shooting at the end and just kind of stretched our muscles out. But it was great. It was just great to get out there. But yeah, that's another great piece of advice. I mean, individual battles and first touch. Yeah, I can't see that going wrong. And you're right. For anybody listening, please focus on those 2 things.
Yeah. Changeover, because that means I have to change my direction of running every 3 seconds.
Well, you are like I said, you are definitely doing all the right things, and the sport is super lucky to have you. And thank you so much for joining us today. We are super thankful, and we'd love to have you back and maybe do a Teddy and Christina, maybe do a duo with the 2 of you.
Oh gosh, that'll
somewhere
be
down the road.
fun. But no, thanks, Adam, for everything you're doing and for staying a part of the beautiful game and the next generation, literally and figuratively, right? This game that continues to adapt and evolve, and something that we both really truly believe is not just on the pitch, but lessons that, go to our personal lives. So it's been an honor to have met you guys through adult amateur soccer and, refereed you guys and got yelled at you guys, but to know that, all this stuff, stays on the field, and it's just such an incredible soccer community that once you tap into it, there's really truly a community and relationships.
It is. It's been very good to me and my family and to my friends around me. So no, thank you again. So for the folks that are listening, we have a great interview tomorrow set up with Tony Sane, former men's national team player, who is very big into philanthropy and with several World Cups. And then next week we have Carlos Simono with the UNC, University of North Carolina, men's head coach. And you probably know Christina, Lori Lindsay. We have her next Friday. Yeah. So obviously Lori was U.S. women's national team player. So thanks again, Christina. And for everybody out there, have a great rest of your evening. And we will definitely see you guys tomorrow. Take care, Christina. Talk to you soon.
You too. Thanks, all.
Bye.